Hello and welcome back to Ep.2 TV. We are live from Malta, and today I have two amazing artists with me on this show. I've got Cynthia Shepherd, an award-winning illustrator and art director, and Nana Lee, a concept artist and illustrator based in London, right?
Stockholm.
Stockholm. You changed since your
Yes,
bio.
I moved.
Okay, still cool, still cool. Well, it's great to have you on this show.
Thank you so much for having us. Yeah.
It's a pleasure. And I mean, the idea of this show is we're going to talk about the role of women in the industry. So, you know, we have someone who's a little bit more expert, someone who's still upcoming.
I mean, we're both experts in being women.
You're both, yes, yes.
To be fair.
That really helps.
Wait, how old are you? I don't know.
Well, I'll start with you, Cynthia. I mean,
Sure.
So you make art for a living.
Yes.
So that's actually possible. That's
Yes,
the thing.
it is very possible. No, yeah, I've been working in the industry as an illustrator for a little over 10 years, and I've been an art director for 4 of those years. And it's not only possible, it's really fun. It's awesome. It's a great way to make a living. And
when did you realize that was the career path you wanted to?
I don't know if the camera can see me put my hand down there, but I was real little. I was young. So I've known for a long time, and I you know, in this conversation, I never questioned being a girl and being an artist, you know, just because none of my girlfriends were doing it. That never mattered to me one lick at all.
It wasn't a popular thing? Because usually people associate it to like little girls drawing all the time, you know, and the boys are playing cool stuff, and
I don't know what other
we're
kids
sitting there
did.
drawing. Isn't that the thing?
I grew up an only child, so like I never really saw what other kids were doing all that much, and so it's just like, I don't know, weird kid, do your thing.
And Anna, you too, like you're an artist, but if your website's bio is updated, then you have a degree in biomedical engineering.
Yes,
and now, how did that happen?
Well, I think for me, art was, I always thought it was going to be a hobby because I grew up in quite a small town in Sweden, and there was no real art industry. There was no one around me to kind of show that doing art for a living was possible. So I went to university kind of feeling like I just need to get out of this small town. My parents are both engineers, as probably a lot of Asian kids can relate to. So, and I was good at maths and all that stuff, you know, good grades and all that. And so I just thought I'll do this in my spare time. I'll go somewhere, you know, somewhere bigger. Maybe I'll figure out what I want. So I went to London and studied biomedical engineering, and while there, got into the small press comic scene, met people who were illustrators for a living, and I'm like, wow, you can actually do this, and if you can do it, why can't I? So that's kind of how it all started.
How did you explain that to your Asian parents, engineer parents?
So luckily, while at university, I entered some competitions, some comics competitions, and won one of them. And after university, I got a contract to do a graphic novel. So I had something in my hand going to my parents, look, I've got my degree now, but also I really got to give this a go. And I said, you know, if you don't, I said to my dad, if you're not interested in what you do, I don't think you're going to ever be that good at it. So this is what I'm interested in. And he was convinced by that. So that was...
Yeah, and I guess the minute you start paying for your own rent and not asking them for money, and they're like, how are you getting it? By drawing, they go, oh, so it is a job. You know, like,
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like you had a lot of options. I feel like art was kind of the thing I was going to do, or I wasn't going to do anything. Like, I don't know.
But in a way, that's what's hard as well. If you have a lot of options, you kind of got to...
Yeah, you have more willpower to do it that way.
You got to really
have to
ask
have
yourself,
more
what do I
willpower.
want? Yeah.
Right.
And
Yeah,
you
that
feel
is
like...
hard.
You feel like, oh, am I giving up this or that? And yeah, I mean, it took a lot of soul searching and sort of sleepless nights and all that stuff. But yeah, I haven't regretted it.
And you're doing it,
Yeah.
so that's great. And like in your careers as women artists, I mean, did you ever face any issues that you think your men counterparts probably didn't have to deal with, or?
It didn't seem like it at the time. Like, I'll be perfectly honest with
Yeah,
you.
please.
I never thought about the fact that I might be being treated differently while I was coming up in the industry, but I've sort of, as I've heard other people's stories, I've looked back and said, oh, you know, maybe that chance encounter that I thought was a chance was actually a guy hitting on me and I was just dumb. Like, you know, there's kinds of things like that that I'm only being kind of struck with now as I talk to more women in the industry, and I realize, like, oh yeah, you're identifying these challenges that I just didn't realize were happening because of,
which is great. It means you were, you know,
right.
luckier.
Right.
But there's, I don't know if you know this website called Women Who Draw. It was initiated a couple of years ago by 2 illustrators, and the whole idea behind it is one of them was looking at like covers of magazines with illustrations on them, and she went and checked out like all the year's editions and realized that out of 55 covers, only 4 had been made by women. So
right.
she decided to like give women artists more visibility, and they started this website to help women artists get more work.
There's a few websites like that I've seen, and I think that one in particular I have not checked out yet, but that sounds awesome.
No, yeah, but the idea is that like sometimes people have you know, this idea that women can only draw certain type of things, like, or certain genres, perhaps. I mean, I know you do a lot of fantasy,
would you like to do children's books? Yeah. Like, I swear to God, if
would
anyone,
you like to do children's books?
my portfolio was like blood and vampires and like, you know, people. I don't know. I had kind of a violent streak when I was coming up in the industry, and it was just like, if you look at my portfolio and ask me to do a children's book, like, do you have eyes? Like, are you seeing the same thing I'm seeing? That's crazy. But no, they're asking me because I was a girl. So again, something I didn't realize back in the day. I thought people were just dumb. Like, yeah, it's probably.
What about you, like, Nana?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I did start by drawing a lot of stuff that maybe is more girly. Like, I started by drawing manga. And actually in the manga...
Is that girly? I mean, like, the industry has a lot of, like, the most famous names are always men.
I would say it's not girly. In the small press comic scene in the UK at the time, it was actually quite 50-50. And that was kind of nice. And it was the older generation of male British comics artists that were like, oh, wow, this is a new thing. Because all the young people were like, there were girls as well as guys. And there was exactly these conversations about women in comics. It's like, do they exist?
Right.
How do they struggle? And it's like, well, you know, we just kind of, we like it, we do it, maybe it's new. But, you know, wait a few years and there'll be loads of us. So.
I think I heard an interview by you, Cynthia, where you actually said, this was years ago, you might be like, I don't think that anymore, but yeah, no. Anything emotional I'm going through comes out in my art.
That's still true.
Now, do you think that is a woman thing? I'm just being the devil's advocate right now.
That's a great question, though, because when I do portfolio reviews with people, both as an illustrator and an art director, I have a very emotional angle to that, and I talk to both, you know, plenty of men, plenty of women. I treat them all equally, and you know, sometimes it is harder, I think, for some of the guys to like latch onto what I'm saying and really like let go and have that cathartic moment. But I don't think, you know, I don't think it's exclusive to one or the other. I think there's some men who are absolutely more in touch with their emotions than some women I know. But I think socially, as you know, certainly in America, and I'm sure all over the world, it's socially more acceptable for women to be more in touch with their emotions. But
yeah, that's one of the stereotypes we're trying to break now.
That.
It's
right.
funny because
and I would love to work with a lot of guys to help break that down. And
right,
you know, yeah.
I mean, it's we were talking about like on this show yesterday as well. We were talking about this, you know, problem, but it's not just in the art world. It's just a general problem, and it's funny we're facing it in 2018 when we thought that we were like doing okay, and
art
suddenly
reflects
it's like,
what's going on in society in so many ways, and I think that's.
Do you think art, like this is a question for both of you, do you think art could somewhat contribute to breaking these stereotypes, and if so, how?
You want to take that one first?
That's a simple one.
I think people owning what they want to do and what they like, you know, and not feeling like, oh, I should be doing this kind of work, or I should be, you know, if I don't know, guys can be doing like cute, adorable stuff, and yeah, just I feel like in this day and age, you think we'd be past this kind of macho culture, but it's still kind of there, and in some environments, that's still very much the way things are. And I don't know, I think art, in a way, it's like, this is where you can be honest about who you are and what you like. It's tough though, because as a commercial artist, you also have to be flexible. So it's kind of like, yeah, doing the thing that you want, but then also
adapting to the needs of a client.
Exactly.
But in general, you think that a person should basically just, you know, do their own art without trying to think of making it political or sending a message through or breaking a stereotype. That's what you said, right? Ish.
It's basically, I think, you know, the person that you are is going to come out in whatever you do. And I don't think if you try and manufacture that, it's going to, I don't know, I think people can also tell.
Okay.
So it's like if you want to draw the kind of, some artists just like these really cool, tough Sailor Moon characters, and like that's what she wants to do. I'm like, that's awesome. You think that's awesome? I think that's awesome. But I don't think that's like an agenda. I'm like, I'm going to do these typical female characters and just toughen them up. It's like, no, that's, yeah.
I agree that people should be themselves, absolutely. And I think in terms of, you know, changing society with art, part of it, from my part, is I want to lead by example. Like, I want to be the artist that I want to be in the industry, to like show people, especially, you know, women who are artists, that that's okay. I think changing one mind at a time is healthy. Like, you know, we can make large political statements with our art if we want to, or things like that. But if we're having one-on-one conversations with people who are struggling to get their voices out there, I think helping them and doing that a lot is pretty effective. Like, yeah.
So yesterday we had a Lebanese artist on this show as well, and I asked her, and I'm going to ask you as well, Nana, like, apart from the gender bias there is in the industry, do you feel there is also a racial discrimination in your work, or do you think that if an artist is good and lets their art speak for themselves, and, you know, these things don't matter?
Personally, I've never really felt any racial discrimination. Yeah, no, I don't know. I think maybe if in different environments, I can see that being the case. But I've been in Sweden and London London is so multicultural that it's been, yeah, I've been quite lucky, I guess.
Also,
I feel like
lucky to live in kind of a liberal, multicultural area. So, and that's the thing, is that, like, yeah, you ask any three women the same question, it's going to be different every time. Just I'm sure there is bias for everything somewhere, and just because it's not in my backyard particularly, or my front yard or whatever, doesn't mean it's not happening somewhere.
Do you have advice for artists like that, like maybe upcoming artists who are, you know, young women trying to make it into this industry, which is, like most industries, still quite male-dominated?
Yeah, there's so many reasons for that, I think. It's so hard to break it down in like, you know, we have 13 minutes left, but, you know, a lot of, I work with a lot of women, I know a lot of women who are artists, and, you know, so many of them either, like, leave the industry to have a family because it's still, you know, they're the ones carrying the baby, or they don't go into the industry because of fear, because they have specific kinds of fear and there's stigma around it, or, I mean, there's just so many reasons. And I think nowadays in school, in art school, they're dominated by women a lot of the time. Like, the student body of most art schools that I visit are mostly female. It's kind of fascinating, and you would think, well, that would translate one-to-one into the industry. But I think certainly things that I would say to young women is don't give up, but you will have to make sacrifices based on what society expects of you. Like, I don't have children, and that is a huge thing for me to not.
And you draw bloody, gory, creepy stuff.
Right.
Yeah, that's another thing.
Yeah, I'd have to hide that for a kid probably, but no, I mean, like, I have flexibility to travel to Malta for a week, and, you know, I have kind of freedom in my job. I have freedom that a lot of women don't, so.
I feel like where the industry can really make it, that's where it's hard to start.
Right.
So you have to create the environments where you create.
It's acceptable to have a family and be an artist. Exactly. I mean, I think
I live in Sweden now, and it's obviously very progressive in these ways. And the company I work for, it's the Swedish law in general. Like, you have to take paternity leave. Like, men have to go away for a certain number of weeks.
Get out.
You gotta leave it. Like, leave. But, you know, and I was talking to a young guy earlier today. He was like, well, and he's Swedish. He was like, well, I'm not sure I like it. You know, I don't want to be forced. I don't want people to tell me what to do. But actually, the angle on that is, like, having that creates more equality when someone considers hiring a guy and a girl, right?
It does,
Because if
yeah.
you hire a girl, you go,
have a
oh,
kid, they're both-
you're going to
if
be
you
away for
walk
a
into
year.
a job interview pregnant, it's like
It's true. I mean,
there's the door,
Scandinavian
right?
countries
Yeah.
are ahead on these issues, like all the countries in Scandinavia.
It's yeah, but it's just like for companies to be mindful of that. You can be, don't just say that you want more women in the industry. Like,
have to
what
ignore
can you, what can you do as a company to make that environment more equal for everyone? You know?
Yes, it's a
I
question.
think the wind agrees with us.
Yeah, that's a very energetic yes. It's giving us right. But how do you think the industry could benefit from a more equal environment and a more
Probably a lot. There's a lot of talent that's getting missed out on because of the way things are run right now. Things have gotten better, but things could improve. You know, I think certainly with freelancers, like we treat freelancers pretty equally. It's just, as a freelancer, you can kind of manage your own lifestyle as an artist. Like when I was freelancing, it was always just super okay to
Why
be.
do you think that is, though?
Just because you don't have the schedule and routine of having to go into an office all the time, and you're not kind of bound by the same office politics, I guess. Just know a lot more women in-house struggle than a lot of the freelancers, I guess.
You want a balanced workforce because it gives you all the different points of view, and I think everyone benefits from that. The business benefits from it. Like your audience, like if you're making games, your audience is not just, hopefully it's not just one gender. Like if you have a workforce, not just women, but also LGBTQ. Like if you can cover that spectrum in your workforce, you just have a better idea of who's out there. And
yeah, and your art becomes more representative of the real world, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I remember speaking to some people at Disney, and they were telling me about how you can see when women started to enter Disney, you can see a change in the stories, a change in the way women are portrayed, in the way they are dressed.
Oh, yes.
Our first princesses that we grew up with were all kind of dumb,
Yeah.
just waiting for Prince Charming to come. Then you start having the princess Ariel who'll step out of water and go get her own Prince Charming, which is still kind of, hardcore. And then from that, we moved on to movies like Brave and stuff where the girl's I don't want to get married, or Frozen, which is about the love of two sisters, and, more than
Frozen's
it is about...
come up so much today.
But it has. But I mean, such a good example of how society is reflecting into animation as well, and you can see that from the way people are portrayed, even in comics. The way you dress a girl changes. If it's a girl dressing them, you can have a girl wearing trousers. That's fine. I mean, there's three of us doing that right now.
I think it just happens when you introduce or meet more people. I think the core of what I hope happens with the industry at large, and that's all of the arts in general, is that we tell more human stories. Meet more people, talk to more people, tell their stories, and then you realize that we're not all so different, but there's little things that I never realized before.
It's not even just about the representation of women in the industry. A lot of it is about empowerment, because a lot of them, you've seen it here at THU. The tribe is full of women, and we've made also an effort to try and get more women speakers to come, which, like you said, sometimes because of family issues, sometimes because of something else,
right.
They can't always make it.
Yeah.
So, but we realized, we were doing this panel at our gathering in Montreal, and it was funny. One of the speakers just said, "Hey, we're all white French men," and we all laughed. And I was hosting the panel, so it was I was the only woman, I was the only ethnically diverse, and it was oh, here I am to balance it out. But
I've been on that panel as the one woman before a bunch of times.
it happens a lot, right?
Yep.
I think I've been in that kind of environment as well, and actually you get used to being that person after a while, and you kind of just don't even think too much about it, and you just kind of fit into that somehow.
There was this study, I don't know if you guys remember, that was, you girls remember, it was a study about how women get interrupted more often than men, and they need to struggle. Does that happen to you? When you're trying to give your opinion on something, is your opinion less valid, or you can
Funny
be honest.
Story on that. So yes, until I decided that I was just going to start talking over the guys. And then I got feedback in my, like, you know, my feedback that, like, she talks too much. It's just like, well, I get my ideas out there, so I guess that's fine.
You have to be louder and stuff, which is not expected of,
well, I think
of
often
women,
like
right?
girls are often conditioned since childhood as well to be a bit like to sit back, to be quiet. And again, this is something that as a workplace you can be mindful of, as a team you can be mindful of, to give space to people as well. Like, you've stepped up to it, which is awesome, but if you're in an environment where, you know, you have a lot of loud voices, just like be mindful of who you're working with. If you know that someone is a bit quieter, you know, just give them space, maybe bring them into a conversation as well. I think it's not just
It's one of our THU rules, you know that, right?
Yeah, excellent.
It's something we can absolutely do. Yeah.
It's just like, it's not just on women to step up. It's also like for men to understand like where other people are coming from. I mean, I'm not saying like don't try and step up. I think women should do that as much as they can. Challenge yourself and like
help each other.
Help each other. See if you can go against this programming that you've had since, you know, you were a kid, and I think together, you know, it should make for a better place.
Yeah, it should. In fact, like you're saying, the issue is not just to women, it's also personality-wise. And it's true, when we're growing up and a boy who cries, you know, you're like, oh, you little girl. And a girl who plays football, you're a tomboy. And, you know, it's all that kind of gender stereotypes that we've been brought up with. Yeah.
I like to help men understand us better, too.
Like, and I think men will be happier if they could cry every now and then.
Oh, absolutely. And no, it's just like, it's interesting. Like, I feel like it's two-sided, and I think sometimes women don't quite understand where men are coming from, and men don't understand where women are coming from. I love to try to bridge that gap as much as possible. And, you know, it's not just about period jokes, but it's, you know, like, oh, yeah, this is what happens when you don't feed us. Okay, so like, it's educational, all right? We're gonna be crazy.
Yeah, true. Like you were mentioning earlier that art schools, now you notice there's a big female presence. So do you think that's also influencing, like, have you ever taught art, or do you, like,
not as a professional teacher, no,
but I've done workshops
at schools and
talks
stuff like that, yeah.
So do you find that, like, your audience engages with you in a way that's...
It's really cool to see how different it is from when I was in, you know, before I was a college dropout.
Did you go to art school?
Yeah, for a while. But yeah, things are definitely different now. I see a lot more confidence in a lot of the women in the student bodies. At least, you know, in the small sample of art schools I've been to. Again, it's probably different in a lot of places, and I'm in America and in a certain area. But like, yeah, I think the tone is changing over time, and I think that growth for women has happened slowly over time already, and will continue to do that. I don't think...
I mean, it's happening in all sectors. We were quoting this research yesterday where, like, there were 3% of women in creative director positions. Now it's gone up to 11%, and, you know, it's slow but steady. You know, we're growing, our presence is growing in the industry, we're making our voices heard. And actually, while talking to you, it just occurred to me that I don't think at THU we have, you know, the poster every year, and now we're gonna take advantage of this show and get Andre to get a woman artist to make the poster next year, because we've got like 6 editions with male artists, which are all amazing artists. But you know, it's I guess we could as well, like as a community, you know, try to bridge that gap and do our part. And networking events like this, like an experience like THU, I guess is very useful. I mean, I noticed walking around that the workshops are, you know, very varied mix, and people like work together a lot and exchange ideas and opinions. And what I like best is seeing people not going like, you know, trying to mingle with people from their own nationality or creating little groups.
I've just been going up to everyone.
Right?
It's just like, hi, you're a person. Let's talk.
And they kind of like, I've seen them be more like, the way to break ice in this, you know, in this environment is very much like, oh, have you got a portfolio? And it's like, oh yeah, so they're looking at each other's portfolios, and that's letting your art do the talk, right?
Exactly, I mean, yeah, when it comes to, you know, getting more women on the poster and things like that, I'm super competitive, and it would just be like, for me, the 5 years of guy posters would just be like,
yeah, man, I'm gonna kick your ass.
It's gonna be me or whatever, you know. Yeah, that's kind of how I've always
been. I think we have Cynthia, you know, offering to do the poster for next year.
Hey,
right?
Hey, Andre,
if you're watching. Yeah, what about you? Like, what's your experience like here? Are you having a good time? Are you meeting other fellow artists?
It's been amazing. Yeah, this morning I was in the animation, the workshop, and oh my God, it was like being hit by a train. Actually, it was really
is that
amazing.
a good metaphor she's doing? I can't tell.
No, it was brutal, but like amazing brutal. If that makes sense.
An awesome
Yeah, and just met so many people from all over
Necessary
the world,
okay.
and there's so many talented people here. You know, women and men. It's just like, yeah, I think it's been a really great experience.
Well, you know what? I hope that you know, the people watching this from home are not put off by the title like "Women in the Digital Art Industry," and they actually. I hope there's men watching us too. Give us your feedback.
Hi,
and
boys.
you know,
Yeah,
let us know what you're thinking. And thank you for being with us. And we'll be back soon with THU TV Live.